One of the most crucial turning points in the spread of Islam comes from the supreme Battle of Badr led by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Fought in the holy month of Ramadan, this battle changed the early Muslims' ummah's sentiments and position as a separate community completely. After years of struggle, the great Battle of Badr helped transform the Muslims' ummah's defensive stance towards stability and growth. However, it is a question of great curiosity how the Muslims managed to contest the biggest nation of that time, the city of Mecca's ruling tribe, the ruthless Quraysh forces, in the huge Battle of Badr. Before diving into how exactly the Battle of Badr unfolded, it is important to know the circumstances that led both the Muslims and the tribe of Quraysh to reach the point of battling each other in one of history's most prominent and unforgiving events. In the early 7th century, the rise of Islam and the events that surrounded it formed the basis of the fierce rivalry between the growing number of newly converted Muslims of that time and the members of the leading tribe of Mecca, the Qurayshites. For context, the Arabian Peninsula had many tribes ruling over it, but the tribe of Quraysh from the city of Mecca was the most powerful and influential among them all. There was no centralized political system, and the loyalties of tribes with each other underpinned the social and political environment of the region. Most of the tribes followed the rulings of the Quraysh, for it was the strongest. Mecca in itself held huge significance for not only being an economic hub of Arabia, but also a religious center for all the Arabs. Because of housing the Kaaba, for Muslims, the Kaaba is the metaphorical house of Allah, most glorified, most high, where all of the pilgrims unite to perform Hajj, pilgrimage made to the Kaaba. But this is where the problem started. It was a huge concern for the Muslim ummah that the Quraysh tribe, with their rule over Mecca, had complete control over the Kaaba too. However, the Quraysh tribe, their main source of wealth was their huge trade market, as well as their role as the guardians of the Kaaba. So, on the contrary, they viewed the spread of Islam as a massive threat to their economic, social, and religious practices. This led to such a bitterness between the two communities that it became a question of who would reside on the grounds of Mecca, as coexisting was no longer an option. When the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, began preaching about the oneness of Allah, most glorified, most high, as well as about equality, social justice, and moral values in the predominant polytheistic society of Mecca, the Quraysh were not happy. The Prophet's teachings completely went against the rulings of the cruel tribe of Quraysh, and the members of the Quraysh tribe showed great resistance and hatred for Islam, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the Muslim ummah as a whole. But the Prophet brought to them nothing but a pure divine message. The teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the name of Islam, were a light in the darkness that had swallowed Mecca because of the horrendous rule of the Qurayshites. The earliest Muslims who accepted and followed the religion of Islam faced extreme oppression from the members of the Quraysh. As more people continued to embrace Islam because of its beauty and divine message, the tribe of Quraysh became more and more merciless and inhumane towards the small population of Muslims in Mecca. It reached a point where the Quraysh started killing, torturing, and abusing innocent people who started converting to Islam. When the persecution of the innocent Muslims became unbearable, Allah, most glorified, most high, through the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, commanded them to leave Mecca and migrate to Yathrib, present-day Medina, where they could freely worship Allah, most glorified, most high, and live according to the teachings of Islam. So, in 622 CE, the Muslims of Mecca set out for Medina to escape persecution from the evil tribe of Quraysh in a historical event called the Hijrah migration. And it seemed like the problem was solved. The Muslims of Medina welcomed the Muslims of Mecca and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, with open arms. The migration to Medina was a turning point for the Muslim ummah, as now they were free to practice their religion without any fear of the tyrant members of the Quraysh tribe. In Medina, the Muslims were able to form their first independent Muslim community with their own rules and regulations in accordance with Islam, and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was declared the leader of this courageous Muslim community. But it was only the calm before the storm. The migrations of Muslims from Mecca only heightened the intense hatred the Quraysh had for them. The Muslims, now in Medina, settled themselves not only socially and politically, but also made themselves stronger militarily. For the Qurayshites, the Muslims were becoming more dangerous than ever before. As the Muslim ummah continued to grow stronger, the Quraysh started devising plans for their downfall. They didn't want Muslims to establish themselves in Medina and live there in peace and harmony. Thus, they tried to find every possible way to make their lives difficult, including attacking their caravans so their trade would be disrupted, or forming alliances with other tribes to separate and attack Medina. At that point, the Muslims realized they were up against a foe like never before. They also knew that despite their smaller population, they needed to strengthen their military power to defend themselves against the potential attacks planned by the vicious Quraysh. However, as the Muslims continued to spread the divine message of Allah, most glorified, most high, and more people joined the religion of Islam, the city of Mecca, under the rule of the tyrant Quraysh, became more important both economically and religiously for Islam to succeed and prosper. Eventually, the disdain and hatred reached a boiling point, and the intense rising hostilities between the Muslim ummah and the members of the Quraysh tribe formed the basis of one of the most significant battles in Islamic history, the Battle of Badr. Badr lies approximately 130 kilometers southwest of Medina in Arabia. It is not far from the Red Sea, located along the western coast of the Arabian Peninsula. At that time, it was geographically extremely important because of its proximity to the main trade route that lay between Mecca and Syria. This closeness was hugely advantageous for the Muslims living in Medina, given that the Quraysh tribe relied heavily on this route for their main trade, which brought them vast wealth. It was only fair to return tit for tat, giving the Muslims the chance to counteract the several aggressive attacks of the Qurayshites by intercepting the trade route of their many caravans, usually loaded with many valuable possessions and gold. This helped in damaging their economic and financial stability. But the Muslims didn't stop there. Other than the great significance of gaining control over the trade route in Badr, the Muslims also secured all the wells there too. In the arid desert environment of Badr, the wells were the only source of water for the thirsty travelers passing by, not only for themselves, but also for their animals carrying the loads of various valuables. A proper source of water was of the utmost importance for the traders due to their long routes in the scorching heat. The control over all the wells in Badr was an extremely smart and strategic move by the Muslims. They also had the upper hand because of their extensive knowledge about the complete terrain around Badr, knowing which specific area could be used for a defensive position and where to have an attacking stance. Later on, this information proved to be crucially important for the Muslims in the intense Battle of Badr. Apart from that, the Muslims knew that as compared to the Quraysh, they were significantly less in number and so needed to secure a strategic location from where to launch their attacks. The short distance of Badr from Medina also was a big advantage because they could quickly supply their warriors with various resources and take down the Qurayshites by surprise. However, in early 624 CE, the Muslims were presented with one of the biggest chances to strike the Quraysh severely. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, through his loyal intelligence members, got to know about a large caravan of the Quraysh tribe returning from Syria back to Mecca, led by Abu Sufyan, filled with valuable possessions as well as substantial amounts of the Quraysh's wealth. The plan was to block the caravan at Badr and seize all the valuables, but the Muslims didn't expect the surprise they got there. The Qurayshite intelligence living in Medina had already informed Abu Sufyan about the Prophet Muhammad's, peace be upon him, detailed plan. He quickly arranged for backup from Mecca, whilst also planning to change his route to avoid the Muslims. When Abu Jahl, one of the cruelest members of the Quraysh tribe, heard of this, he decided then and there to wage war against the Muslims. As a result, he prepared 1,000 men equipped with all sorts of weapons and gave one command: to end the Muslims once and for all. Both the rivals, for the first time, finally confronted each other with rage in their veins, both ready to become victorious in the major battle of Badr. However, only one would emerge as the most powerful nation in the whole Arabian Peninsula. Despite the unforeseen circumstances that were forming the beginning of one of the greatest battles of history, the Muslims fearlessly agreed to fight for their religion and their rights. It seemed like an impossible battle to win. The members of the Muslim force consisted of only 313 courageous men set to do battle under the supreme leadership of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The important figures in this small army were Abu Bakr Siddiqui, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib. May Allah be pleased with them all. The Muslims had very limited resources, which included only 2 horses and no more than 70 camels. However, none of these factors lowered the high morale of the Muslims, who were ready to battle their oppressors with their deep faith in Allah, most glorified, most high. As compared to the Muslims, the Quraysh army was massive, with a total of 1,000 men, 100 horses, many camels, and very advanced weaponry. Their army was led by the cruel Amr ibn Hashim, also known as Abu Jahl. Their blood was boiling with an intense hatred for the Muslims, ready to mercilessly end them. But all the preparations the Muslims had been doing beforehand came to fruition. The Muslims were the first to reach the land of Badr, which gave them an upper hand in planning strategically for the battle. In the dry desert, all the wells held extreme significance because it was the only source of water there. Upon Hubab ibn Mundiyat, may Allah be pleased with him, clever suggestion, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, commanded all the Muslims to position themselves in front of the wells, thus securing all the wells of Badr completely. This was a calculated move that would later work in the favor of the Muslims. Apart from that, the Muslim army had a strategic location. They stood on the hard and firm sloping ground of a hill, leaving the Quraysh no choice but to stand on flat and sandy soil. And, as if by a divine miracle, it rained the night before the battle, making it difficult to tread for the Quraysh. The night before the battle should have been full of distress for the Muslims. However, all the Muslim warriors felt extremely at peace and confident with their plan for the battle. They prayed to Allah, most glorious, most high, for victory, and found solace in their supplications and slept in tranquility. However, The Prophet, peace be upon him, was exceptionally anxious. The Prophet stayed near Badr, which is about 60 miles away from Medina. Whilst in camp the night before the battle, the Prophet, peace be upon him, facing the Qibla, stretched out his hands and cried out to Allah, most glorified, most high, for his help against this much larger and better equipped Quraysh. He feared that without Allah's help, the Muslims would surely be defeated and there would be no one on earth to worship him. On the other hand, the enormous army of Quraysh was absolutely exhausted because of their long, hectic journey from Mecca. Despite their great strength, they felt anxious about the battle with their fierce enemies. The Great Battle of Badr was fought in the blessed month of Ramadan. It is notable that most of the significant Islamic events occurred during Ramadan. On the 17th of Ramadan, on a hot Monday morning in the second year of Hijrah, 624 CE, the fearless Muslim ummah confronted the mighty tribe of Quraysh. They faced the Quraysh with the anguish of persecution and oppression of the Qurayshites stirring in their hearts. Both armies faced each other intensely on the ground of Badr in the scorching heat. The Qurayshites, after seeing the small number of Muslim soldiers, instantly became confident about their easy victory. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, organized his army by placing his most experienced and aggressive warriors at the front. The battle began when Utbah ibn Rabi'ah, his son Al-Walid, and his brother Shibah stood in front of the pagan army and asked the Prophet, peace be upon him, to send them their equals for a duel. Hundreds of companions around him, and many of them were hoping to be called upon by the Prophet, peace be upon him, but he chose to start from his own family. The three men from the Quraysh were to combat the most courageous warriors from the Muslims, which were Ali ibn Abi Talib, Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, and Ubaidah ibn Harith. May Allah be pleased with them all. The Muslims easily won these initial duels, with Ali taking the life of Walid, Hamza killing Shibah, and although Ubaidah embraced martyrdom from severe injuries, both Ali and Hamza avenged him. The Quraysh were in absolute shock from the Muslim warriors' effortless victory in the initial duels, and their rage intensified on losing their loyal men, whereas the Muslims became more assured in themselves and were encouraged by their triumph, thanking Allah, most glorified, most high at every step. After several isolated duels, the fight finally turned into a full-blown battle. Now, the only confidence the Quraysh had was in their large number of warriors. However, as the Muslims continued to fight aggressively without backing down, soon the Quraysh's numerical strength didn't matter. The uneven terrain and extremely narrow space for battling also helped eliminate the huge difference between the number of warriors of the Qurayshites and the Muslims. Other than the above factors, the unflinching Muslims were constantly assured and encouraged by their great leader, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He reminded them that they were battling for the right cause and that winning this war would free them from the shackles of their merciless and oppressive rival forever. His continuous supplications boosted the morale of the Muslims, as they knew that Allah, most glorified, most high, was at their side. And that is when Allah, most glorified, most high, sent down divine help from the skies. It is believed that Allah, most glorified, most high, helped the Muslims by sending 1,000 angels to help them fight the large number of polytheists, thus further making their positions stronger in the battle. Apart from that, the Prophet, peace be upon him, took a handful of gravel when the battle was extremely heated. He threw it at the faces of the pagans, saying, "May your faces be disfigured, Allah terrify their hearts and invalidate their feet." It is said that one handful of gravel managed to blind hundreds of men in the battle. As the Muslims continued to dominate the battle, the Quraysh were losing their confidence despite their great strength and advanced weaponry. The sheer determination of the Muslims to defeat the Qurayshites at any cost was an unexpected blow to them. Furthermore, their resolve took a major hit when their arrogant and vicious leader, Abu Jahl, was beheaded by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, may Allah be pleased with him, whom he used to curse and beat, deeming him inferior to everybody. Even in his final moments, Abu Jahl glared at his foes, demanding his neck to be cut in a way that his head stood proud even in death. But that false facade would not save them from the impending doom of reality. Gradually, as more prominent Quraysh leaders continued to lose their lives at the hands of the ferocious Muslims, the remaining soldiers, discouraged and frightened, had no option but to retreat from the battlefield to save themselves. The Muslims, with their strong and strategic positioning, managed to capture the majority of them. More than 70 Qurayshites met their fatal end on the land of Badr, whereas only 14 warriors embraced martyrdom from the Muslims' side. The Muslims, after their years of anguish and struggle, finally emerged unexceptionally victorious in the Battle of Badr. They stood with their chest out in pride and grateful for Allah, most glorified, most high's divine help. This victory marked the start of a new journey for the Muslims. Before this battle, the Muslim ummah was disregarded by almost all the tribes in the Arabian Peninsula. However, defeating the most powerful tribe of Quraysh set the record straight that the Muslim forces are not to be looked down upon. The Muslims in the Battle of Badr had not only killed some of the major leaders of the tribe of the Quraysh, but also captured some of their most prominent figures. This broke the social and economic system of the tribe into pieces. The word spread of the Muslims' huge victory on all the tribes in Arabia and beyond did not dare show any contempt, fearful of what might happen to them if they challenged the bold and gallant Muslims. In Medina, their status was significantly elevated. This new respectful position in society prompted many tribes to ask the Muslims to form alliances with them. All the Muslims felt more confident in the teachings of Islam. Many polytheists from the Quraysh tribe, on seeing how the war unfolded with the help of Allah, most glorified, most high, accepted the religion of Islam wholeheartedly. Despite these Qurayshites being the ones who once oppressed the Muslims to a great extent, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his followers accepted them with no grudges and open arms, which showed everyone the beauty of Islam. With the Quraysh's trade route now being compromised, the Muslims were able to recover most of their lost valuables and wealth, thus further rendering the tribe of Quraysh extremely economically weak. This recovered wealth helped the Muslims develop their military and become even stronger. Only 6 years after the Battle of Badr, the Muslims were able to easily conquer Mecca, with the Qurayshites there bowing their heads in surrender. Finally, the Muslims were back in their homeland where they were persecuted before to the point of migration. The triumph of the Muslims from the Battle of Badr is one of its kind and would proudly mark the legacy for all Muslims to come. It is not just a simple victory in the war, but a display of the power of faith. The Muslims, despite having fewer members and resources, showed the tyrants that their belief was enough to give them the strength to not only battle, but also emerge victorious. The war also showed the beauty of Islam and its rules of equality in the ignorant Arabian society, as warriors of different castes and colors all united under the one name of the Muslim ummah. In Islam, The Battle of Badr shows its great significance by being the only battle mentioned by name in the Quran. The Muslims till now celebrate the day of the Battle of Badr because it was the only battle in which Allah, most glorified, most high, himself sent help in the form of angels. Allah, most glorified, most high, named this day as the day of criterion, Yawm al-Furqan, in the holy book of the Quran, which means the day on which good and evil battled. This victory boosted the Muslims' morale and also invited new people to the religion of Islam from across Arabia. Both the rich and the poor found comfort in the righteous rules of Islam. Thus, the Battle of Badr's victory was not only the victory of the Muslims, but the triumph of all those oppressed by the tyrant Arabians. Thus, the enduring legacy of the Battle of Badr serves as a reminder of how the Muslims, in order to achieve their goal and rise from the oppression of the society, struggled and fought until they became the most powerful and fearless nation in the whole Arabian Peninsula and beyond. Turn on the notification bell so that you are the first to learn about the most compelling events in Islamic history. If you enjoyed this video, then click here for another video delving into another turning point in Islamic history.